well as remove you as the beneficiary on her life insurance. His hand dropped away, falling limply by his side. No doubt, she also listened to my advice and hired a private detective. I gather she sent him to get photographic proof of your infidelity at that cheap little motel you like to take your secretary to every day at lunchtime? She slipped into his thoughts briefly, read the answer in the chaos there, and smiled with satisfaction. Not only had the wife done that, she'd then taken the proof straight to a good divorce lawyer. The woman was now safe, and on her way to being single again. After that, though, the woman had told her dear hubby that the fortune teller at the carnival was the one who had given her the heads up, and put her on this path, and it had been the best $20 she'd ever spent. Which was why Divine now had an irate and soon-to-be-divorced and destitute husband on her hands. Divine waited, braced for the man's anger. But instead of the explosive rage she expected, he asked in a small, frightened voice, "How did you know?" "No one knew. I didn't tell anyone what I planned. Not even Tiffany." "Did you even bother to read the sign when you walked your wife to my trailer that day 2 weeks ago in Pahrump?" she asked with amusement, and then reminded him. "Madame Divine. Let her do a reading and define your future," she reminded him. "Yeah, but that's just... it's a scam," he protested. "You're a carny. You just scam people out of their money for a laugh." "Yes. Of course," Divine agreed coldly, and then tilted her head. "So why aren't you laughing?" Alan Paulson flinched as if she'd struck him, and then his awe and dismay gave way to the rage she'd expected earlier. Divine saw it roll over him, knew he was about to blow his top without the need to read him, but slipped into his thoughts anyway. It was like cutting through soft, half-melted butter with a ceramic knife. The man was so angry his thoughts were wide open. Divine wasn't terribly surprised to read that he'd brought a gun with him and planned to use it. She waited until he'd pulled the weapon from inside his jacket and raised it, though, before reacting. In fact, she let him get so far as to put his finger on the trigger before snapping her hand out, latching onto his throat, and lifting him off the ground. She then whirled and slammed him against her RV. When the gun fell from his hand and he moaned in pain, she released him. The man fell like a rag doll. He landed on his ass with his legs splayed, a dazed expression on his face, and Divine immediately dropped to straddle his lap. Gravel ground painfully into her knees, but she ignored that. Caught him by the hair at the nape of his neck, pulled his head to the side, and sank her fangs into his throat. A little shiver of pleasure slid through Divine as thick, warm blood began to gush from the wound, was collected by her teeth, and passed into her body. It gave her an immediate rush as the nanos in her body swarmed, eager to collect this new supply of nourishment. The man had jerked in surprise when her teeth pierced his skin, and he'd raised his hands to try to push her off, but he never actually got around to exerting any pressure. Instead, he froze briefly, his mind overwhelmed as hers automatically began to transmit her own pleasure to him. In the next moment, he was moaning and tugging at her instead, pulling her closer with one hand, clasping her head with the other, and murmuring encouragingly, "Oh yeah, baby, please." He was also arching his body under her, rubbing a sudden hardness against her. Divine usually didn't cause pain in her victims, but this one deserved it. She also wasn't terribly eager to let a man who had planned to murder his own wife dry hump her there on the carnival grounds, so she deliberately withdrew the pleasure that she was experiencing and had unintentionally shared. But she also slipped into his mind to control his reaction, to prevent him from screaming out in horror and pain as his mind cleared and he became aware of what was happening. Divine was always careful not to kill her hosts.